These are passages, comparative passages from the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. This morning's topic is Perfection is Self-Transcendence. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. We begin this week with a passage from the Gospel of St. Matthew. Love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. If you love them which love you, what reward have ye? Do not even the tax collectors the same? And if you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even pagans so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. This teaching is a continuation of last week's lesson. To love all equally is possible only by seeing God everywhere, in others as well as in yourself. See whatever comes to you unasked for as a manifestation of His will. Be grateful for the pains you experience, for they are healing strokes of His love. Sometimes healing is effected only by strong measures, but His love for you is manifested even in the very attempt to heal. Strive always to be impersonal, as though whatever happens to you is happening to someone else. Persecution gives us the supreme opportunity to deny the thought, this is happening to me, and to affirm our inner freedom from the thought of ego. Don't allow the negative perceptions of others to become your own self-definitions. Seek God. This is the true goal of life, though how difficult to cling to in the midst of hatred, spite, and persecution. The Bhagavad Gita tells us in the 7th chapter, out of thousands, one strives for spiritual attainment, and out of many true seekers who strive assiduously to reach me, one, perhaps, perceives me as I am. O truth seeker, be one among all those thousands who seeks the supreme goal. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. This is a beautiful passage this morning, and it has many lessons for us in it that are extremely valuable. It's talking, first of all, about how we need to see everyone in God's light, to love everyone equally. It's not so easy. It's so much easier to love our friends and to love our relatives, well, sometimes. But those who are close to us, those that we are in tune with, it's so much easier. My karma has led me to live in many countries. And I was reflecting that I've been part of Ananda now for 47 years, almost 50 years. It really dates me, you know. But because of that willingness to be a part of it, whenever I was asked to go to another country, I would do it. So sometimes it was in America. I lived in the Palo Alto Center many, many years ago, early 80s. and then moved to Italy, lived there for a couple of years, starting our work there in 85. And then Seattle, then, each time then back to the village. So I've only lived at the village maybe 15 years or something like that. I've been out all of that time. Now I say that, and then there was India, of course, 9 years in India. But coming back and forth to America, and then finally we landed here in Sacramento. What was so magnificent about each one of those moves equally was that every time I was introduced to a whole group of devotees that I had never met. They were all my brothers and sisters. I knew that. They were devotees of Yogananda, disciples, and so my heart was open to them. And every time at the beginning, I saw them all as God's light. There was no differentiation. Everyone was equal. I didn't know who always came to Sunday service or who always came to morning meditations or who never came. I didn't know any of those distinctions, and I didn't care. Every person I met was with an open heart and seeing God's light. It was magnificent. And then, week by week, day by day, month by month, you start forming impressions of people. Don't do it. Fight it tooth and nail. That's one of the things about relatives. They know you since you were born, and so they have this impression of you. They know that you like pasta and you don't like this or that. We have to be completely free of those definitions, self-definitions for sure, and those ones that are imposed on us by others. We aren't any of those things. We are a frozen drop of the sky. Frozen spirit that has manifested in all of these forms in order to learn and grow and become that light, tune into that light consciously with love and joy, to choose it on our own. That's why we have free will, so that we can grow to the point where we want the light. We want God's presence in our lives. We want that joy, that freedom. I think one of the most important and meaningful things that I ever learned from Swami Kriyananda was in one of his books where I read that karma, we always think, oh God, my karma is so terrible. But instead he was saying karma is a gift of love from God. Karma is showing you, don't put your hand on the hot stove, it's going to hurt. Move away from that. That's all karma is. It's showing us the right way to live, the way to freedom, the way to joy. And there's another many beautiful lessons in this week's reading. Another one is, let me just read it so I have it exact. If I can find this week. Let's see, here it is. Strive always to be impersonal, as though whatever happens to you were happening to someone else. That's quite a teaching. Now, that doesn't mean be so detached that you're just uninvolved in this world. You can take it to that extreme. Rather, it's saying, take a step back from yourself. View what is happening to you not as though every single thing impacts you. How does this affect me? Instead, view it impersonally, even the things that do affect you and infect you. View it all impersonally. Learn to take yourself less seriously, you could say, but more impersonally. Don't be so attached to your own reactions, your own feelings, your own desires. They just bind us. They make us unhappy. They aren't worth it. Think about when you were a child and all the things that you held so dear and thought were so important. Do you even remember them now? Do you even care? Do you even have those things that were so important? I had a brown dog, little stuffed animal, that meant everything to me. And one day, my mother decided it was just beyond repair and beyond washing, and she threw it out. The great tragedy of my childhood. I never got over it. I still remember it. But do we really want that now? Do we really care? Are we glad to be free? A great devotee of Yogananda, Sam Badani, just passed away yesterday. And we will miss him very much. Such a great soul. I don't know if all of you realize this, but he was serving until the last possible moment. He even gave a Friday night satsang for all of us just a couple of weeks ago from his hospital bed in hospice. But he always wanted to share. If this pandemic hadn't gotten in the way, he would have driven out here from Colorado last year. He said, I will go anywhere to talk about Master. And he left this life as he had lived it, free of things, free in spirit. Beautiful, beautiful passing. It always intrigues me why people want to conquer the world with warfare and power. Why? It's such a short span of life. Why use it in tyranny? It's just trying to bolster the ego. And we can look at the things happening in the world and we can say, oh, what an inflated ego this person has or that person has to be storming the gates of whatever. But take that same lesson inside. What is it that you have built around yourself? These walls, these demands, these desires, feelings, hurts, whatever it is. There's a wonderful yama that is not in the traditional 10 yamas and niyamas, 5 each. And it is one from ancient scripture that we ran across, and it's just a marvelous idea. And that is non-agitation during suffering. Isn't that marvelous? We all suffer. It's part of life. But we don't have to get into it. We don't have to do all the, oh my God, this is incredibly painful. This is terrible. This is happening to me. This is not right. This is all those things that we do. In fact, Swami Kriyananda, when a friend of ours was dying many decades ago, he said to her, never give in to the consciousness of the disease. And it's a little bit of the same thing. Don't get agitated by all those things that we suffer from. Like Swami's song, the non-blues, grief's one thing, but complaining's another. Never complain even to yourself. Do what you can to remedy the pain, the discomfort, the suffering. Certainly try to ease it in the lives of others. Do everything you can. But don't give in to that consciousness of pain and suffering in yourself. Sam Padani's passing also reminded me of Seva's passing. She left this world in November, and her story was so beautiful because her name, Seva, means service, and her life was certainly one of continual service. And on the day that she passed, she did her shift running the Shrine of the Masters at Ananda Village, where all the beautiful relics of Masters' lineage are kept, and there's a little gift shop there. So she did her shift, she walked home, and she didn't feel very well. So she called a friend, and her friend came over, and within a few minutes, Seva had left her body. And I find that so inspiring because that's how I want to leave this world. Dying with your boots on, in other words, serving till the very end, and then going into that light. Many of us have felt Seva's presence since then, her blessing. I've kept her picture near a little altar that we have in our home, and I look at her every day, her beautiful smile, her exquisite light. And that's what we all are. Live in that consciousness that we are spirit, having a human experience, for better or for worse. I don't know whose idea this was, but anyway, here we are. We are having this experience. Let's experience it as children of God and make that our identity. Not this body and its aches and pains, but the truth that we are God's children. Live in that consciousness, and we can change the world.
We thought seriously about singing this song for you instead of the one that we're going to do after I finish talking, but I thought I'll just sing it anyway. And this is Swami Kriyananda's song that was originally called Go On Alone, and now it's called Walk Like a Man. And it touches on the theme of the first song that we sang, Dare to Be Different, a little bit, but in a unique way. Walk like a man, even though you walk alone. Why court approval once the road is known? Let come who will, but if they all turn home, the goal still awaits you. Go on alone. Follow your dream, though it lead to worlds unknown. Life's but a shadow, once our dreams have flown. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone. Or give life your heart. Bless everything that's grown. Fear not the loving, all this world's your own. Make rich the soil, but once the seed is sown. Seek freedom, don't linger. Go on alone. Go on alone. Go on alone. That song was personally very moving to me because it was the first song of Swami Kriyananda's that I ever heard, and it was at a Sunday service, my very first one of those as well. And it somehow spoke to my heart in a way that told me I was home. And it just, I felt it was as if, I was 19 at the time, 19 and 3/4 or something like that, but anyway, I was relatively young, but those 19 years had felt like I was kind of headed in a different direction from everybody else around me. Nirmala was talking about loving your relatives, and I did. I loved them to bits, but they were going in one direction and I was going in a different one. And we just couldn't quite get together on that. And although my mother, to her credit, was very supportive of my living a spiritual life and wanting something different, I think she could just see from the get-go that I was headed off in a different direction. But that, like the first song we sang, Dare to Be Different, and like this one, there is this sense of, okay, I know that I have to be dedicated to truth. And I know that not everyone else around me is going to be. So I invite everyone else to come along who wants to. But if they don't, then I'm jolly well going to go on alone. And that courage, and I appreciate the fact that Swamiji paired that affirmation with this topic, because it requires courage. Which is to say, and those of you who know your Latin or your language roots, courage comes from the root of the heart, cuore in Italian, and it takes that heart. You have to have heart in order to make a choice like that and to embrace a life of courage or to embrace a courageous decision. Which is to say, not that you don't feel fear, not that you don't have some angst or anxiety about the choice that you're making, but that you do it anyway. You boldly go into the unknown. Nirmala referred to living in other countries, and I also lived in those same countries, although not always at the same time that she did. But I remember that feeling of moving into the unknown. First place was Italy, and I thought, I know Spanish. This is going to be great. Well, guess what? It only can get you so far. It gave me a leg up on learning the language, so that was a big help. But every time I opened my mouth, something Spanish came out, and it was people just sort of looked at me like, dude, where are you from? What do you think? But that feeling of, and I remember this also, we were asked in 2013 to make a trip to Russia and teach and meet the devotees there and do some programs on a Kriya initiation. And I remember this feeling flying, the last flight. The first one's, you fly once in America, and then the next one is to Frankfurt, and then the one after that lands you up in Moscow. And it was like, okay, this is new territory. You get past Poland and it's like, I don't even know where we are here, but we're definitely moving out of familiar territory. This ain't Kansas, Dorothy. And then we landed, and it was like, oh, well, these are devotees. We're with our own. We may not quite understand the culture, although I came to appreciate certain things. I remember learning to appreciate that there was an army of saints that I had never heard of before, and wild ones. I mean, saints of any culture are cut out of a different cloth than most people, and yet they are just exactly who they are and nobody else. And that's what makes them dare to be different. They're not daring to be different, they're daring to be themselves. And that's ultimately what we have to do, is actually just simply dare to be who we are and not get colored by or influenced by others to be something that we're not. It's perfectly fine to be influenced by others to move forward on that path. This is one of the things that Swami Kriyananda often emphasized and always encouraged, even if he didn't articulate it in words. He said, I'm not trying to convert anyone to anything except your own higher self. And if you find inspiration in that and help and benefit in that, then it's a great blessing to share whatever we have to share. But don't ever feel that someone's trying to twist your arm to be exactly what they think. It's rather find that truth in yourself. Follow your dream, though it lead to worlds unknown. Life's but a shadow once our dreams have flown. What if men cry, your dream is not our own? Your soul knows the answer. Go on alone. And this passage from the Bible that concludes with the words, be ye therefore perfect. That's a good challenge. That's a really good challenge. That's one I remember in the Christian tradition that I grew up with. That was not part of the software coding, that particular one. The message rather was, you're all sinners, confess your sins, receive the grace, which confessing is fine, receiving grace is fine, but calling yourself a sinner, no, that's just a bad idea. Because what does it do? Even if it were a fact in the moment that you are a sinner, even if we were to grant that point, to call yourself that is an excuse to say, oh, well, anybody remember I'm only human. Nobody's perfect. Anybody remember that from their childhood? It was like you screw something, well, nobody's perfect. It's an excuse of saying, well, I didn't do it so very well, but see, I'm only human. And I would rephrase that and say, no, you're not fully human yet. Because to be fully human is to be, in fact, perfect. But that perfection is not a thing. And that's the part that's hard for us to grasp. Because we tend to think of a goal. I used to run when I was in high school, and I was okay at it. I mean, I wasn't competing for the state championship, but still, I was in the world that I ran in, I was a decent runner. But I mean, I remember those milestones. I mean, one of them was to break a 5-minute mile, or to break a 2-minute half mile. Or I remember reading about Roger Bannister in the late 50s or mid 50s, breaking the 4-minute mile, and it was like, whoa, And you think, okay, that's a goal, that's a milestone. Break that 4-minute mile. Okay, so then you do it. Well, then what? Then it's just, oh, well, okay, then go faster than that the next time. But see, it's the direction. It's not the thing. And that's the part that is hard for us to grasp because we get fixated on one static goal. When we travel and we go to a museum or a cathedral or something, you see these statues. You see a murti of Yogananda over here. And it's beautiful in its way. But it captures one shot, whereas Yogananda was living, moving, changing. I recently saw this little GIF file, a little tiny video, like 5 seconds or 3 seconds. And all it is of him making this gesture. He's bowing like that. But even that is a help because you get a little flavor of his consciousness and it's moving, it's living. You can't really ever capture that in stone or even in a photo. It's like you get one glimpse, and it's helpful to look into his eyes because there is a magnetism. There is something that is conveyed. But if we're going to become perfect, it doesn't mean we're going to achieve one thing and then after that it's all gravy. It means we're going to embrace the process. We're going to embrace the flow towards the divine light. This chant that we sing, I am the sky. I am the vast blue ocean of sky. I am a little drop of the sky, frozen sky. Okay, now the logical mind, this just occurred to me this morning as I was chanting it. The logical mind could go, well, now wait a minute. Which is it? I am the vast blue ocean of sky, or I am the little drop of the sky, frozen sky. I mean, it's one or the other, right? It's not both. Can you be both the ocean of sky and the little drop of the sky? Well, Yogananda is saying yes. Well, I will add that it's a question of which way are you looking. If you're looking towards the little drop of the sky, then that's kind of where your consciousness is. Which is to say, if you're looking at your body or your personality and saying, okay, this is who I am, well, that's vulnerable. Bodies get tossed aside. Bodies get hit by bullets or, get obliterated in one way or get sick and die of cancer. I mean, stuff happens to bodies. So if we think we're that, then, we could be in trouble. We could get hit by a car or something bad could happen. But if we're the vast blue ocean of sky, it's like, what's a body? I have one. That's good. It's nice to have a body. It gives us a chance to have a certain kind of experience. But we are beyond. And ultimately you have to say we're both. Okay, we are both the vast blue ocean of sky and the little drop of the sky. This is one of the beautiful implications or beautiful perspectives that the Eastern teachings give us, is that it's often both and. We're not just either or. But Swamiji helped us to understand that, because if we're looking at the ego, if we're looking at the narrow, then we start to think that that's what we are. And then we're limited. Then we've embraced that limitation and said, okay, well, I guess I'm only human. But Master's trying to say, no, you are divine. And you're having a human experience with a body, with the circumstances of your life. But look to that perfection. I love that Christ says, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect. Because he's saying you can. It is possible. And in the Christian tradition that I grew up in, nobody went there. Nobody would dare to go there. They couldn't deny that it was in the Bible, but I'll tell you, that one never came up as one of the readings, one of the quotations. You know, the business about loving others and turning the other cheek and not being like the tax collectors. I mean, that part all came up. But the be ye therefore perfect, the little footnote down at the bottom, no, that was a little too scary. Because it was too easy to just say, no, we're sinners. Well, let's don't be sinners. If we do something wrong, okay, fine. It's fine to admit. It's even okay if you have to call yourself a sinner to do it, as long as it's in the context of, but I'm moving towards the light. Swamiji, before he became Swamiji, was interested in becoming a hermit. And there was one small problem with that, which was that he smoked cigarettes. And he thought, what self-respecting hermit smokes cigarettes? I mean, it's just like, I cannot go there. You know, apart from the fact that it costs money, and I'm not going to have a lot of money. So he thought, all right, well, I got to quit this thing. But every time he'd try and quit, he'd go back. But he did this one thing. Every time the end of a day came, and he still hadn't managed to quit successfully at that point, he would say to himself, I have not yet succeeded. But the subtext of that was, but I will. And if we say that to ourselves, whenever we run into a habit that with cruel force binds us back into old patterns, old ways of thinking. Swami said he gave kriya initiation to a man who was an alcoholic, and he could not resist having the bottle of whiskey. And so he practiced his kriya. He had his kriya beads in one hand and the whiskey bottle in the other hand, and he would practice some kriya, and he would take a swig, and he would practice some more, and he would take another swig, and one fine day, he put the bottle aside, and that was it, and he never picked it up again. And I do not advocate that for alcoholics, just being very clear. However, I do advocate that if you get a good sniff of bliss, whatever else is competing with it will not be competing with it anymore. Once you taste that, nothing else compares. So let us be therefore perfect by having that bliss, and let all the rest of it go away, because it will in divine light.